Alright, let's talk Blue Protocol Star Resonance. If you've spent even a little time in the game, you've probably noticed that while most class specs feel solid, especially once you hit late game, some of them just hit different. They either deal more damage, move faster, or scale way better as your gear and levels improve. That's exactly why picking the right class early on can save you a lot of time and frustration later. In this video, I'm breaking things down in a simple way, without overcomplicating it. I'll be going through the best class options for the three main roles: DPS, tank, and support. This isn't just about what looks cool or feels fun at level 10, but what actually performs when content gets harder and teamwork starts to matter. I'll explain which classes shine, which ones fall behind, and why some specs are just built differently in Star Resonance. If you're wondering what to main or thinking about switching roles, you're in the right place. Let's jump into the tier list. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking classes in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. The classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Thornlash. This is one of those builds where you want it to click, but the game keeps reminding you that good intentions do not equal good performance. Thornlash under the Verdant Oracle umbrella is built around cycling marks to deal damage, which then trigger heals, basically trying to live that off-damage, off-healer lifestyle. On paper, that sounds flexible and smart. In practice, it feels like the build is constantly apologizing for existing. The damage is okay, the healing exists, but neither ever feels strong enough to fully justify the slot. You are technically helping, but the game never lets you forget that someone else could be helping more. The real problem is that Dissonance just does this whole hybrid idea better. Higher damage means stronger healing, and on top of that, you get access to powerful buffs that actually change how fights feel. Thornlash ends up stuck in an awkward identity crisis where it is not quite a real damage dealer and not quite a real healer. To be fair, with the right late game gear, Thornlash damage can become surprisingly respectable, and being a ranged style does give it a genuine advantage. Dodging boss mechanics is easier, positioning is safer, and you are less stressed during chaotic fights. Still, when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture in Blue Protocol Star Resonance, Verdant Oracle players aiming for a healer and damage hybrid will almost always get more value by switching to Dissonance, even if Thornlash tries really hard to convince you otherwise. The classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Falconry style, Stonewall, and Aerial style. This is the kind of playstyle that makes you feel like a hero while clearing mobs, then gently humbles you the moment a boss looks at you funny. Falconry absolutely shines when it comes to area damage, melting player versus environment packs like they were never meant to exist. You have great utility, solid battlefield control, and your pet-based kit makes group fights feel smooth and satisfying. When enemies are stacked together, Falconry feels fast, flashy, and powerful in a very addictive way. The downside hits when single target boss damage enters the conversation. Falconry leans hard on critical hits, and if your critical chance is not pushed as high as possible, your damage falls off a cliff. Pairing Falconry with Heavy Guardian helps a lot thanks to their grouping tools, letting you burst packs efficiently, but even then, you are still suboptimal against bosses. In Blue Protocol Star Resonance, Falconry is amazing at what it does, but you need to accept that boss fights are not where you are here to flex unless your gear and critical stats are absolutely min-maxed. Stonewall is one of those tank styles that sounds sturdier than it actually feels. Instead of consistent, sustained tankiness, the rotation revolves more around burst defensive tools with noticeable cooldown gaps in between. You are not constantly unkillable, you are more like briefly invincible, then politely asking your healer to keep an eye on you. That design alone is why Stonewall can feel a bit uncomfortable in longer, high-pressure fights. That said, Stonewall does deal more damage than Block, which makes it noticeably better for solo play and open-world content. The problem shows up in ultra-late game boss encounters, where Block simply outlasts Stonewall over time, until you reach the point where Tempest Ogre and Frost Ogre smooth things out for bossing and the group content. Block just feels more reliable. Stonewall's health tends to drop at a steadier pace thanks to counters and damage reduction, which healers appreciate, and your area damage dealers will love your grouping tools. It is not bad, it is just not the comfiest tank option on the road to endgame. I will be honest, this one comes with personal trauma. Skyward has moments where it feels incredible, and moments where it feels like the terrain itself has decided you should lose the fight. The aerial movement can be buggy and extremely dependent on positioning, sometimes straight up failing when you need it most. When that happens, the gameplay feels clunky in a way that is hard to ignore, though this may very well be improved in the global release. When Skyward does work though, it is a thing of beauty. You are incredible at dodging boss telegraphs and mechanics without breaking your attack flow, assuming the boss does not randomly move and leave you swinging at air. You bring fantastic burst area damage, respectable single target damage, and you synergize well with dissonance buffs. On top of that, your grouping tools make area damage dealers very happy. With fixes to aerial mobility, better camera height, and wider field of view, Skyward has the potential to be one of the most mobile and high damage specs in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. When it clicks, it really clicks. The classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Bulwark style, Concerto style, Overdrive style, Iaido style, and Ray style. This is the kind of tank that just refuses to die out of sheer stubbornness. Bulwark with the recovery specialization is still a very strong tanking option because your sustain is honestly ridiculous. You rotate damage reduction, healing ring, and taunt, and suddenly you are healing yourself so much that enemies start questioning their life choices. Judgment-based healing makes you extremely self-sufficient, and once you add a healer on top of that, you are basically playing on tutorial difficulty. The reason this lands in A tier instead of S is simple. Damage starts to matter more in endgame content. Recovery cannot stack the same maximum health and shielding as the shield-focused setup, which means your health bar is volatile. It drops fast, it goes up fast, and big boss hits can absolutely punish you if you misplay. Add the fact that you are locked into melee, making boss mechanics harder to dodge, and you have a tank that is powerful but demands awareness. Safe, strong, but not quite flawless in Blue Protocol Star Resonance endgame. Concerto is the kind of support that makes your entire team feel smarter, stronger, and way more confident than they probably should be. While its raw healing numbers can fall behind Dissonance when that spec is running optimized offensive gear, Concerto more than makes up for it with absurdly strong team buffs. These buffs scale incredibly well in coordinated content, and they feel especially future-proof once Dragon Raids arrive on global servers, where buffing a larger team really shows its value. It sits in A tier because, once again, damage matters a lot in endgame scenarios. Concerto still deals respectable sustained damage, just not enough to compete with higher tier damage-focused supports. On the bright side, being more range-oriented than melee makes dodging boss telegraphs easier and safer. You are not just a heal bot, you are a force multiplier, and when group content expands, Concerto is going to age extremely well in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Vanguard is not just a melee damage dealer, it is a skill check. This spec absolutely outdamages Skyward and aerial builds if, and this is a big if, you master its combo rotations and maintain high uptime. Your damage skyrockets when everything clicks, but every missed input, bad position, or forced dodge hurts your output. It is easily one of the hardest melee specs to play properly in the game. Yes, Skyward is easier, and yes, it is less punishing, but Vanguard rewards commitment in a way few specs do. Learning attack chains, reading boss mechanics in advance, and positioning perfectly turns you into a sustained damage monster. The jokes about Skyward players being casuals are half serious, half trauma talking, but the truth is simple. Vanguard is harder, but if you put in the practice, it pays you back with top tier sustained damage in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Stormblade is what happens when reliable melee damage meets very little room for mistakes. Iaido leans heavily into burst damage, while Moonblade focuses more on sustained pressure, and both paths are very viable. For Iaido specifically, Thunder Sigils and Overdrive are the go-to starting tools, and dumping resources into maximum Thunder Sigils gives you terrifying burst windows when paired with dissonance buffs. Moonblade's Scythe has received buffs that make sustained combos feel smoother and more rewarding, similar to Vanguard's spear gameplay. The real skill ceiling here comes from abusing invincibility frames to dodge boss mechanics while keeping your damage rolling. Do that consistently, and you are looking at some of the best melee damage uptime in the entire game. Hard to play, extremely rewarding, and absolutely lethal in the right hands. Ray is the classic high-risk, high-reward damage dealer. Early to mid-game, this spec feels unfair in the best way possible. You deal massive damage while face-tanking mechanics simply because interrupting your beam feels illegal. Bosses melt, health bars disappear, and everything feels under control as long as you are allowed to stand still and channel. That fantasy starts cracking in late game content. Endgame bosses do not care about your beam, and standing still becomes a liability unless your gear score is extremely high through grinding or pay to win routes. On paper, Ray has higher damage than Icicle, but in real fights, Icicle often performs better simply because it allows constant movement and cleaner dodging. Ray struggles with burst windows due to its stationary nature, but when you pull it off, you are unleashing some of the highest damage potential in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. The classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Best Master Style, Dissonance Style, Radiant Guard Style, Frost Lance Style, Block Style, and Healing Style. This is the definition of safe, lazy, and disgustingly effective damage. Best Master fully abuses the martial and range split by letting you sit comfortably in the backline, calmly running rotations, or even borderline autoplaying while still outputting some of the best damage in the entire game. Because you are ranged, dodging boss mechanics and telegraphs is significantly easier compared to melee classes, which means higher uptime and more consistent damage without breaking a sweat. Your Wolf Companion plus your single target boss killer rotations absolutely shred bosses from early game all the way into late game with very little effort required. You do need a solid amount of critical chance for both your damage and pet synergy, but unlike Falconry's area damage style, you are not heavily punished when crits do not happen. The trade-off is limited area damage for clearing groups, and in ultra late game scaling, some melee damage dealers can surpass you. Still, for raw consistency and ease of execution in Blue Protocol, Star Resonance Best Master is king. Dissonance is, without exaggeration, the strongest support style in the game. Your healing scales directly with your damage, which means the harder you hit, the better you heal, and with the right gear, you deal very respectable area and single target damage on top of that. On top of insane healing output, you bring multiple attack buffs that dramatically increase your team's overall damage, turning average burst windows into boss melting moments. This style shines the most when paired with damage-oriented tank setups like Bulwark, allowing your group to fully commit to aggressive boss strategies. Once you learn how to properly align your offensive buffs with team burst rotations, Dissonance becomes a high-skill, high-reward monster that arguably defines the meta. The main drawback is that you are melee, which means anti-melee boss mechanics will constantly test your positioning and awareness. Play it well though, and Dissonance feels like the best spec in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Radiant Guard with the shield specialization is my preferred Shield Knight setup simply because it deals more damage, and that damage scales beautifully with Dissonance support. In endgame content, you maintain extremely high uptime on Radiant Shield and Holy Circle, meaning you are constantly providing shielding, damage reduction, and steady damage output all at once. Shields scale with maximum health, and since Radiant Guard stacks Lightforged better than any other tank, your shields become absurdly strong. The downside is that your health tends to be more spiky compared to Heavy Guardian, whose health drops more gradually, making you slightly harder to heal. That said, by the time you reach endgame, tanks are fairly balanced overall. You function as an off-healer and defensive powerhouse, but you will want something like the Tempest Ogre Imagine to compensate for your lack of native enemy grouping. Frost Lance is a near-perfect blend of raw damage and control. You deal incredible area and single target damage while sacrificing just a bit of raw output in exchange for crowd control effects like slows, which add massive value in both boss fights and group content. I personally prefer the Icicle-focused approach because the added mobility makes dodging boss mechanics far easier while maintaining damage uptime. Your damage rotation is flexible and satisfying, built around generating Mystic Ice with Crystal Veil and Meteor Storm, then cashing it in through him-based rotations. That usually means spamming empowered Ice Spears or empowered Blizzards depending on the situation. The result is consistent, adaptable damage that feels strong in almost every scenario. Frost Lance earns its S tier spot by being powerful, smooth, and incredibly reliable in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Before ultra late game homogenizes tanks with Frost Ogre setups, Block Heavy Guardian is simply the better tank compared to Stonewall. It offers superior sustain, stronger damage reduction, uptime, and overall more reliable defenses across most of the game. You feel tanky all the time, not just during cooldown windows, which makes a huge difference in difficult content. Healers absolutely love Heavy Guardian because your health bar is stable and predictable, dropping at a steady pace thanks to consistent damage reduction. On top of that, you bring excellent utility through enemy grouping tools, something Shield Knight lacks in its base kit. While you deal less damage overall, you more than make up for it by being the safest and most comfortable tank to play and heal in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. No matter how the meta shifts, you always need a dedicated healer, and Healing Verdant Oracle fills that role better than anything else in endgame content. For Chaotic Realm and especially future Dragon Raids, this spec is non-negotiable. While Dissonance offers hybrid damage and healing, Verdant Oracle wins outright in raw healing power, with Lifebinder standing as the strongest pure healer in the game, even if it deals virtually no damage. Being fully ranged makes sustaining tanks and damage dealers much easier, especially compared to Dissonance, which has to juggle melee positioning and boss mechanics. Your core gameplay loop revolves around maintaining Nourish uptime, pre-casting Nature Ward for incoming mechanics, and keeping Life Bloom pulses rolling for constant regeneration. You smoothly alternate between area healing fields and single target burst heals, making this spec incredibly consistent and forgiving. If your goal is to keep everyone alive, Healing Verdant Oracle is the gold standard in Blue Protocol Star Resonance. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.